In this video, we'll be taking a look at 5 college basketball games happening on February 14, 2026, and providing you with free team picks and total picks for each one of those games, so 10 picks in total. Welcome back to Cash Out Sports. Let's dive right into it. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe and to click the bell icon to get notified as soon as these videos get released, so that you have more time to plan out your bets as we provide these videos on a daily basis. I can guarantee that you'll have all the important information that you'll need on these 5 college basketball games after fully watching this video. One more thing before we start. If you would like to gain access to our best exclusive sports picks to take your journey to the next level, then check out our Patreon in the link down below, where we offer our best single picks, parlay picks, and much more. Now let's get started. UCLA versus Michigan. Chrysler Center turning into a sea of white for a Valentine's Day showdown feels like the kind of setting that tests how real both resumes really are. Michigan walking in at roughly a 90 points per night clip, with that 23-1 overall mark and 13-1 in league play, has the profile of a team that does not just win, it overwhelms. UCLA coming in at 17-7, solid in the standings but much shakier away from Los Angeles, has spent a lot of this season looking like one version of itself at Pauley and a very different one once you take the comfort of home out of the equation. The neutral site story in November already showed how far Michigan's ceiling can go when the lights are bright, and now that same explosive group gets its biggest regular season home stage of the year with towels flying and CBS cameras pointed right at them. The physical gap on the interior tilts things in a very specific way. Michigan's front line plays like a collection of skyscrapers that somehow all move like wings, and that matters against a Bruins side that prefers spacing, cutting, and skill rather than sheer bulk in the paint. Possessions where UCLA does everything right for 20 seconds can still end with a contested jumper over length, and if that shot misses, Michigan's rebounding edge is waiting underneath. Those extra boards do not show up in the box score as anything wild, but they slowly stretch margins and turn close games into the kind of double-digit cushions where crowds start smelling a blowout. The backcourt dynamic does not exactly ease the Bruins' night either. Michigan's guards are happy to pick up early, pressure the ball, and turn any lazy pass into a chance to run, which is not ideal if you are trying to protect your legs on a cross-country trip with a midday tip in a hostile building. UCLA's guards are tough and experienced, and they can absolutely hang for stretches, but their margin for error shrinks when every miss feels like it might become an instant run out the other way, with that whiteout crowd roaring every time Michigan strings together a couple of stops. Teams that have stayed inside the number against this Wolverines group have usually been able to either dominate the glass or completely dictate tempo, and UCLA is not really built to do either on the road in this specific environment. Everything about Michigan's season so far screams that when they have a chance to put a team away, they do not pull the plug early. The rotation is deep enough that even when the starters sit, the style does not change much, and the effort from the bench guys tends to keep the hammer down well into the second half. That sort of personality is exactly what you want if you are looking at a matchup where the favorite can turn a comfortable lead into a statement win, especially in a nationally televised showcase game. As our first pick for this matchup, the Michigan Wolverines to cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. Michigan sitting near 91 points per game on the season and UCLA hovering close to 80 creates a natural expectation that the scoreboard operator is going to be busy. One side loves to run off misses, the other is perfectly comfortable spacing the floor and firing from deep, and that combination usually produces long stretches where defense is more about surviving than completely shutting anything down. Tempo is the sneaky star here. Michigan loves to push after defensive rebounds, and with their dominance on the glass, that means a lot of early clock opportunities where the first good shot is often the one they take. UCLA's shooting profile, with its confident perimeter game and willingness to let threes fly, encourages a bit of a shootout feel too. Misses from deep can turn into fast breaks, makes force quick responses, and suddenly you have two teams trading possessions at a pace that does not look frantic, but absolutely adds up in total points. Game flow can actually work toward more scoring even if the margin gets a little lopsided. If Michigan builds a cushion, the Bruins still have every reason to keep playing aggressively on offense, hunting threes and quick drives rather than milking the clock. That kind of chasing tends to create more runouts and secondary breaks the other way, which is music to the Wolverines' ears. Even if the final minutes slide into what looks like garbage time on paper, the reality is that Michigan's bench can score, and UCLA's pride is not going to let them just dribble the air out of the ball and accept whatever number is already on the board. Free throws are the other quiet piece in a high-scoring script. An attacking Michigan team putting pressure on the rim forces UCLA to decide between giving up layups or reaching in and hacking, and neither choice is particularly friendly to an under. Trips to the line stop the clock and add points in the slowest, most methodical way possible. On the other side, a Bruins team trying to claw back will not exactly shy away from contact either, and that back and forth at the stripe can really inflate a total late. The history between these programs recently has already shown that when they share a floor, the offensive talent often wins out over any theoretical defensive grind. With Michigan's current scoring punch, UCLA's outside shooting, and the emotional charge of a showcase afternoon in Ann Arbor, this one shapes up as another chapter that leans far more toward fireworks than a slog. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. St. John's versus Providence. Picture this matchup for a second. A ranked buzzsaw walking into a gym that used to feel like a haunted house, only now it is the visitors who show up with all the emotional baggage. St. John's rolls in at 19-5 overall and 12-1 in league play, riding a 10-game heater that includes that wild overtime escape against Xavier and a statement win over UConn, so their confidence is not exactly in short supply. What makes it even more annoying if you are on the home side is that they have actually looked more comfortable on the road than some teams look in their own building. They have not dropped a true road game yet. They sit in that tiny national club with Michigan as unbeaten road squads, and they have been smacking Big East opponents away from home by double figures while flirting with 48% from the field and north of 42% from deep. This is not the kind of favorite that needs everything to go perfectly to survive. Their whole identity leans into size and contact, and they do it without apologizing. That front line built around Zuby Ejiofor and Bryce Hopkins, along with that extra forward in the mix, just keeps hammering the paint until your bigs are breathing heavy and reaching. They live at the stripe, which is not an accident. St. John's is earning around 27 free throw attempts a night, which sits near the very top of the national ladder, and more than 23% of their scoring comes from the line, again up in that top tier. So when the game tightens, when possessions feel heavy and legs get tired, they have a built-in pressure release that tends to travel well into any arena. On the other bench, Providence plays like a walking contradiction that somehow still makes sense when you watch them. They are sitting at 11-14 overall and 4-10 in league play, yet they fire off around 88 to 89 points per game with an offense graded comfortably in the upper chunk of the country. Yet, then you look at the other side of the ball and see them allowing roughly 85 to 86 points, buried down in the 300 range in defensive efficiency, and you understand why their box scores look like pickup games. The message is basically, we will run with you, but we are not promising anything when it comes to getting stops. Jalen Sellers is the headliner, a straight-up scorer who just dragged them through a double overtime grinder against Butler, dropped 36, played 43 minutes on a leg that was not 100%, and still had to watch his team give up 87. St. John's answers with an attack that averages about 84.5 points per outing while keeping opponents closer to 72.2 and under 43% shooting. So they can sprint and trade buckets if that is the script, but they also have a sturdier defensive floor than Providence, which matters when the game gets choppy and someone finally has to string together 2 or 3 stops in a row. Layer on the emotional side of things too. Providence took the first meeting 77-71, and this trip sends Bryce Hopkins back into the same building where a serious knee injury short-circuited his time there before he moved to St. John's, so that is extra fuel for a veteran group that already plays with an edge. You get a focused road favorite that has motivation, depth, and a coaching staff that knows exactly what kind of game it wants. From the market angle, the books are treating St. John's like a real road heavyweight, hanging a spread that respects what they have done away from home and still dares people to trust Providence to stay with them for a full 40 minutes. Projection models that mimic what you see on Ken Pom put this closer to a solid multi-possession win on neutral terms, which hints that if the Red Storm play their usual style, win the whistle battle, control the glass, and punish Providence for trying to turn everything into a track meet, they have plenty of ways to turn a close game into something more comfortable late, especially once the foul game comes into play. Honestly, this is where that free throw profile matters again, because a team that already piles up trips to the line can stretch margins in the last 2 minutes while the clock is barely moving. One more quick piece for anyone treating this like broadcast prep. Every player mentioned by name here, Zuby Ejiofor, Bryce Hopkins, Dylan Darling, Ian Jackson, Josen Sannon on the St. John's side, and Jalen Sellers along with Providence regulars Erhun Muncy, Powell, Floyd Jr., and Daniels sits on the active 2025 to 2026 roster according to the official listings, and none of them appear as out on the widely used injury sheets for this matchup. Sannon's ankle issue from the Xavier game has been described as minor with the expectation he is ready for Providence, and Sellers has been logging heavy minutes despite that leg concern, so the expectation is that both cores are available, with the usual tiny caveat that warm-ups can sometimes surprise everyone. So you are basically looking at the hotter, deeper, healthier, better defending group that also tends to control the whistle and has already shown it can handle true road tests, and that profile is what the number is asking you to buy or fade. As our first pick for this matchup, the St. John's Red Storm to cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. Providence games turn into circus shows, and that is not an insult, it is just the style. They pour in about 88.5 points a night and give up around 85.6, with a defensive rating hanging deep down the national list. Add those together and you are already in a scoring environment that lives in the low 170s on average, and that is before you even account for any extra juice from pace or late whistles in this specific spot. St. John's brings its own firepower to that party, around 84.5 points per game on roughly 46.3% shooting from the floor with almost 35% from behind the arc, while still keeping opponents in that low 70s range. When they get pulled into a race, they do not panic, they just lean into the idea of trading your layups for their free throws and threes. Here is the thing, that kind of stylistic mix rarely produces a calm, low-scoring grind. It produces swings, mini runs, and a lot of possessions where both sides feel like they can score in 2 or 3 actions. If you look at the projection-style numbers that show up in those analytic previews, you see a median outcome sitting around an 89 to 83 type scoreline, which stacks up to roughly 172 total points. That is a lot of buckets for a college game, and it fits what you see with your eyes when you watch these two play. The recipe is pure gasoline. Providence leans on a high-usage guard, likes pull-up threes, has a big who can sprint the floor, and then bleeds points on the other end. St. John's pressures the ball, forces roughly 14 turnovers per night, turns live ball mistakes into instant transition chances, and ranks among the better teams at drawing whistles and stacking free throws. More fouls mean more clock-stopped scoring chances, and when a game lives in that 6 to 10 point window late, the intentional foul routine can quietly push an already high-scoring game even higher. It is worth remembering that the first meeting stayed way tamer on the scoreboard. Providence won that 177 to 71, only 148 total points. Anyone who just stares at tonight's matchup and yells that a high total is automatic probably has not looked at how both teams have shifted since then. Providence has doubled down on the idea that they will try to outscore you. You see it in games like the 97 to 87 double overtime battle with Butler or that 87 to 80 loss against Seton Hall where the defensive issues popped up again. On the other side, St. John's offense has leveled up behind Ejiofor's leap and cleaner guard play, so their ceiling in these fast games feels higher than it did early. There is also a human side that pulls in the same direction as the numbers. Hopkins coming back into this building again, Sellers gutting it out through pain and likely needing a big shot volume to keep Providence close. Those are the kinds of stories that usually live in a fast-tempo game where stars touch the ball a lot, rather than a slow half-court rock fight. That part is a bit narrative and it cannot be proven beforehand, but it matches what the current season stats and that projected scoreline are already shouting, which is that this matchup leans toward pace, whistles, and a lot of made shots. So when you think about the total here, you are not really hoping for a defensive slugfest to magically appear. You are deciding if you trust that these two stay true to what their resumes say they are in mid-February, free-flowing, whistle-heavy, guard-driven offenses with one defense that leaks points and another that helps speed the game up through pressure and transition chances. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Texas A&M versus Vanderbilt. Memorial Gym feels less like a college arena and more like a quirky stage where visiting teams have to adjust to a whole new script. The floor is raised, the benches sit in strange spots, and sightlines can mess with shooters who are used to more standard setups. For Vanderbilt, that is just home, their daily workspace, where the routine makes sense and the crowd energy wraps right around them. For Texas A&M, it is another unfamiliar building on a tough road stretch, and that matters when the pressure climbs and every possession starts to feel a little heavier than it should. Vanderbilt has been playing with the confidence of a group that knows exactly what it is good at and is not shy about leaning into it. The offense is built to score in different ways, not just by raining jumpers, and the defense is sturdy enough to hold its own when the game slows down and turns into a half-court grind. That kind of balance shows in how they close games. They do not just rely on one hot hand. They rely on habits, spacing, and decisions that have been hammered in through the season. Honestly, that is the kind of profile you like when things get tight late. A team that can still execute even when the shots are not falling perfectly or when the whistle gets a little inconsistent. Texas A&M on the other side brings plenty of fireworks, but the sparks have started to land in some uncomfortable places recently. They can score with anyone when the rhythm is flowing, yet the last stretch of conference play has exposed how fragile that approach can be when the defense is not backing it up. That recent loss to Missouri, giving up a big number and getting hammered in the paint, did not just add another mark in the loss column. It highlighted how often the Aggies ask their offense to dig them out of holes. When you combine that with a 3-game slide in league play and remove a key two-way piece like Megbeko from the mix, the safety net feels a little thinner, especially against a composed home team that thrives in its own odd building. Here is the thing, styles do not just clash here, they collide in a way that favors the group most comfortable living in the grind rather than chasing a track meet pace for 40 minutes. Vanderbilt can absorb an early Aggie surge, trust its structure, and lean on the little edges that come from familiarity, crowd energy, and a defense that, while not perfect, is more dependable over long stretches. Texas A&M still has enough talent to make runs, but asking them to sustain high-level shot-making in a tricky road environment without the same level of defensive backbone is a big ask. As our first pick for this matchup, the Vanderbilt to cover the spread as favorites is our full-game side pick. The first thing most people will think when they see this matchup is simple. This looks like a points party. One team scores in the 90s, the other lives in the high 80s, and both get to the free throw line often enough to make score bugs feel like slot machines. On paper, that screams constant action. But games do not always follow the script printed on the stat sheet, especially when you look at how these two have actually been playing lately. Texas A&M has had stretches where the offense looks unstoppable, then suddenly feels stuck in mud. That loss to Missouri was a good example. Hot start, then a long wobble, then worn down legs as the game went on and the defense kept giving up easy looks inside. Those swings create pockets of time where the scoring slows, and those little droughts add up quickly if the rhythm never fully returns. In a high-total game, a few empty trips in a row matter a lot more than people think, especially if both sides get a bit tighter as the clock ticks down. Vanderbilt, despite its scoring punch, has started to lean into a more serious defensive personality, and that changes the math on the total. They use length, switches, and pressure in smart spots to force late clock situations where you are not getting a clean look, you are just trying to get a shot up before the horn goes off. That is not the style of a team in love with a full-court sprint for 40 minutes. When you add in the fact that some of their guards have been in and out of the lineup, there is even more reason to be deliberate with tempo, value every possession, and avoid turning the game into a chaotic back and forth where mistakes pile up. Memorial Gym itself has a strange way of dragging scores down a bit, especially early. The sightlines are unusual, the backdrop can throw shooters off just enough, and an early tip can make legs feel a little heavier than usual. You get those first few minutes where both teams are figuring out the depth of the rim, the feel of the floor, the whole environment, and that often shows up as missed shots that would normally drop in a familiar building. Over the course of the game, that can keep the pace a touch slower and the scoring just a notch below what the raw season averages would suggest. There will still be fouls, there will still be trips to the free throw line, and there will absolutely be some runs where the scoreboard flips quickly. But when you zoom out, the combination of recent offensive inconsistency for Texas A&M, a more defense-conscious approach from Vanderbilt, an odd shooting environment, and coaches who know they are staring at the stretch run of the season all point toward a game that can underperform the explosive scoring reputation these teams carry on paper. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Texas Tech versus Arizona. Texas Tech walks into Tucson looking like real trouble, but also like the perfect measuring stick for how Arizona responds after that sting at Kansas. The Wildcats rattled off a 23-0 start, sitting at number 1 in the country before that 82-78 loss in Lawrence, and everything coming out of the program since has sounded more like a reset than a meltdown. Now the whole thing shifts to Alchemy Arena at McCall Center on Valentine's Day, with College Game Day in town, a Ring of Honor ceremony for former star Caleb Love at halftime, and a top 16-style showdown carrying Big 12 stakes that everyone in the building can feel. Texas Tech shows up with the kind of modern attack that looks great on a whiteboard and even scarier on film, built around an All-America level big in the middle, a point guard sitting on top of the league in assists, and wings who are very happy to let it fly from deep. They fire from 3 on a huge share of their possessions and connect at around 39%, which puts them in that national elite territory where a quick flurry can erase a lead or blow a game open. That style is beautiful when the shots are falling, but it is also volatile, especially in a loud road gym where every miss feels heavier and every long rebound can turn into a run the other way. Arizona answers with the profile of a heavyweight that can handle that kind of volatility, sitting near the top nationally in the efficiency numbers with an offense that scores in bunches, a defense that smothers, and a tempo that runs a little hotter than what Tech usually lives at. The Wildcats do not just run pretty sets, they send big bodies into the paint, pound the glass, and force you to absorb contact over and over, like a team that is very comfortable playing through the interior instead of living and dying from the arc. Scouting notes and foul trends around this matchup point toward Tech being more fragile when you make them protect the rim for full possessions, which lines up neatly with what Arizona already wants to do. That kind of stylistic clash, perimeter-leaning offense against interior bully ball, often tilts toward the group that can win in more ways and win in the more physical spaces. On the personnel side, both rotations look largely as expected. Arizona is missing Dwayne Aristide, who is sidelined with an issue that takes him out of the picture, and Texas Tech still has Latrell Hoover sitting as a redshirt. Outside of that, the main minute eaters are available, which means this is not a game where the story gets twisted by injury luck or sudden depth problems. So when you stack Arizona's two-way efficiency, the extra gear they have at home, the emotional bump of a banner-type night, and the fact that Texas Tech's dependence on the 3 can flip from weapon to liability if the rim tightens up, it sets up a scenario where the Wildcats have several realistic paths to getting separation late rather than needing a miracle in the final possession. As our first pick for this matchup, the Arizona Wildcats to cover the spread as favorites is our full-game side pick. Arizona is averaging 88.8 points per game. Texas Tech is checking in at 82.3, and when you casually add that up in your head, you get a raw picture that screams plenty of buckets without even talking about pace yet. Those numbers are not empty highlight reel fluff either. Efficiency metrics have both offenses sitting in that top-tier neighborhood, with Arizona producing 125.9 points per 100 possessions and Texas Tech at 123.7, a reflection of how clean the shots are that they create and how often those possessions end in something useful rather than wasted trips. One group likes to attack the lane, punish mismatches inside, and keep pressure on the rim. The other prefers to stretch the floor, pull defenders out, and create driving gaps and open threes off that spacing. Put those two approaches on the same floor and you get a rhythm where almost every trip has a clear intention, either a hard touch in the paint or a shot that is hunting 3 points instead of 2. That kind of clarity is trouble for defenses trying to stay connected for 40 minutes. Tempo adds even more fuel. Arizona wants to run, the crowd wants them to run, and Texas Tech is not exactly allergic to a fast game when it suits them. Tech's heavy three-point diet means possessions often resolve quickly, with makes that reset things in a hurry or misses that create long rebounds. Those long rebounds are gold for a team like Arizona, which loves to grab and go, turning broken plays into layups or foul draws before the defense even finds its matchups. Whistles matter here too. Tech's interior defense has shown a tendency to pick up fouls when it is forced to absorb repeated drives and post touches, and Arizona's bigs are built to lean into contact rather than shy away from it. In conference games at this level, once you get into that last stretch of the second half, you often see free throws piling up as both sides live in the bonus and every trip carries extra weight. The clock pauses, players catch their breath, and points still stack up, which is exactly what total backers love even if it makes coaches a little nervous. Then there is the stage itself. A national showcase with game day in the building, a halftime ceremony celebrating a beloved former star, and a crowd that showed up expecting a show, not a grind, all create a subtle push toward a freer game. Coaches are less inclined to slam on the brakes when their teams are flowing, and players feel that green light in transition a little bit more. Add in the fact that both teams have late-game creators who can manufacture tough shots when things bog down, plus the usual late fouling and the presence of several three-happy lineups that will likely stay on the floor deep into the night, and the script starts to look much more like a track meet than a slow, choppy defensive slugfest. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. That's all for now, so if you have any other games you would like reviewed, then leave a comment down below with the game you would like analyzed, subscribe to our channel, leave a like on this video, and we'll get to it as soon as we possibly can. We would also love to hear your opinion on the picks presented to you in this video, whether you agree or disagree with them, so leave a comment down below and do let us know.